Hey, free timers. Everyone talks about financial independence, but almost nobody talks about time freedom. What is it really? And why might it matter even more than your net worth? In this episode, we'll crack it open. Let's get on with the show.
Welcome back to the Time Freedom Podcast, where you can learn how to rethink your work and your money to create a life you love right now. Join us for insights to help you find meaningful freedom so you can choose how and when and with whom you work for as long as you want. Here are your hosts, me, Brian Herriot, and Kirby Denison. Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the Time Freedom Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brian Herriot, and with me is...
Kirby, I am your co-host.
Wonderful. So today's episode is all about what time freedom is and what it isn't. We also want to tell you a little bit about what kind of brought us here to this venture. But before we get started on all of that, we wanted to introduce ourselves. So I can go first. I mentioned my name is Brian Herriot. I am a husband, father. I live in California in the San Francisco Bay Area for most of the year. And in the summers, I spend it in northern Wisconsin, in the beautiful part of the state that the locals call up north. And we have a small cabin on a beautiful lake near our families, our extended families. And I have been able to create this lifestyle in the last 4 years that is this perfect combination of working hard during the school year. We also have a son. And enjoying my time and thinking bigger about things during the summer. And this lifestyle has prompted a lot of people to ask me about it. So much so that I started coaching financial advising in support of it. And that has then led to my creation of a journey for writing a book. And what we will be talking about over the next 20 episodes is a lot of the content in the book as a way for you to get to whet your appetite before it comes out on April 8th, 2026. I'll stop there. I'm sure you'll learn a lot more about me as we go through the rest of our time here together, but I want to let Kirby introduce herself.
Yes, thanks, Brian. I am Kirby Denison. I am also a wife and mother of three littles, 6, 4, and 2. So, as you can imagine, we're in the thick of it. There's never a dull moment with my son, which I will share plenty of stories, I'm sure, around them in the coming episodes. I am a fractional COO slash OBM and adding in coaching to my offers. And I live here in Colorado in a super small town. It's not the beautiful mountains that everyone dreams of. It is definitely plains and looks like Kansas and Nebraska. So I'm excited to jump into our first episode here. And Brian, tell us a little bit more about like this work-life balance. Is that even a thing?
Yeah. Yes. So, time freedom as a concept, people ask me a lot about. And the first thing they will usually say is, well, isn't that just work-life balance? Isn't that really what you're talking about? And it is so definitely not. Work-life balance, which I've heard more recently called work-life alignment. I actually believe it was Jeff Bezos who came up with this. Work-life balance, people really know that it doesn't really balance because I think of it like taking 2 hours off over the lunch hour to then make up 3 hours of work late at night. Work-life alignment is more like, well, I'm going to align a little bit of life within my work. It's almost like giving up on the concept. It's very hours and days focused. Time freedom is really a lifestyle change. It's broader in its view. So it's thinking in months and years and decades. And so the way I like to explain time freedom is that you're crafting this perfect work that fits with your money and fits with your lifestyle and how you spend, such that it kind of works for you throughout the year. Sometimes this is seasonal schedules like me, and I'm able to take a lot of time off in the summer and then work intensely through the rest of the year. But it can look different for different people, and there's different ways to do it. And that's what we'll talk a lot about here over this season. Yeah, I don't know. Like, does work-life balance work for you, Kirby?
Definitely not. There's no balance. It's a give or take relationship for sure. It's
Our
interesting the
friends,
alignment
I'm sorry.
concept.
Yeah, and I think you're kind of you're a little bit past it, but we had friends that used to call, whenever you had two kids under the age of 3, they called them the dark years because you kind of were just in the dark in your home surviving.
Hmm.
Anyway, think of time freedom as the exact opposite of that.
It's a beautiful
The light,
place
the light years.
that I'm striving for.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So tell us about the financial freedom. Do we have
Financial,
financial
okay,
freedom when we get to time freedom? How does that work?
good question and good clarity because I think a lot of people would think, oh, that's maybe a little bit interchangeable. And I actually believe it isn't. I pursued financial, I was one of those people that tried to get on the early financial freedom bandwagon and cut my spending and save a whole lot and try to get to this point where I could retire early, by the time I'm in my 40s. Well, guess what? It didn't happen. And it didn't happen because, well, for one, I had a kid and kids are expensive. And for two, I live in California. I live in San Francisco Bay Area, as a matter of fact, and it's just expensive to live here. It costs money. Life costs money. So, strict spending control to try to retire early just didn't work. And so I finally come to realize that early financial freedom really is kind of a myth. Actually, as part of writing the book, I found a 2023 Gallup study that looked over the past 20 years at how many people actually retire early. And they had it broken down by 30s, 40s, 60s. And the number I was looking at the 40s, I know, and specifically how many people actually retire early. And it was like between 1% and 2%. So for all the people that, would love to do it, it's just not possible. And without being extreme in how you do things. And I'm not an extreme person. I'm pretty balanced. And so time freedom is a way to achieve the freedom of your lifestyle without having to be 100% financially free. And because of that, because you're still willing to work, and for a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, we like to work, we like to create, we like to do things that contribute. It's just a matter of if you can organize that in the perfect way, you can find freedom of time much earlier than it would take to build this giant mountain of money that then you have to live off of forever and be nervous if the stock market ever goes down. So financial freedom is this long-term situation where you never have to work, and time freedom is much quicker, and it's a situation where you can choose to work. And when you do work, you can work for when you want, on what you choose to work on, and for whom you want to work. It's empowering.
It is very empowering. And to your point, I mean, I went the Dave Ramsey route. I remember getting out of college and being in my 20s. You know, your very first job isn't always the best paying job, but it was a job. And I was fortunate that I quickly moved up in the financial industry. And also, we Dave Ramsey'd it. And then you have almost this weird mindset of like you can't spend because you have to save, save, save.
Right.
And I knew when we started having children that exactly what you're saying, daycare is not cheap, and sometimes you want to go buy them a new outfit, and maybe that's not in your budget outfit or outfit budget for the month, but you're going to do it anyway, and where can you pull that money? So just having that freedom and not the constant like, oh my gosh, is this in my envelope, is this in my envelope, is very freeing to me, and something that I think anyone can get behind. I know it's one concept that we talk about a lot throughout your book, and also that we'll get to eventually is one of my favorite concepts. So kind of tell me, how did we get to this journey of you writing a book, and what's your story?
Yes. I have always valued freedom from an early age. And as I said, I pursued it a lot. But I think what's hard in this life is that we get kind of pulled back into the rat race of things. And so my quick backstory is that I have been I graduated University of Wisconsin first with an industrial engineering degree and then with a master's in business. I spent the majority of my career in management consulting. So I was flying around, working on projects for clients in different states, kind of the opposite of freedom. Although I'm not necessarily, I don't think that that's a bad thing because especially when you're starting out, you need to develop skills and you need to, develop a network and things like that. But before I knew it, I was kind of on this path towards, senior leadership in a company. So I worked for UCSF Health in the San Francisco Bay Area. And this was about when I was 37. So that's like 12 some years ago. It was my first position as a director, and I would commute into work using this thing in California, in San Francisco, that we called the casual carpool, which is kind of weird. It's like hitchhiking. Like, it's hitchhiking. Basically, you show up. For me, it was in front of the KFC, and you get in a stranger's car, and then you drive over the Bay Bridge, and you can go through the carpool lane, so you get there faster, and their cost is low, and whatever. One day on
Did you
that
have the same
drive,
driver every day?
you don't have the same driver every day, and there's a lot of protocols. You cannot touch the radio or anything like that as a rider. If you have a good rider, and so you're also actually, back when I did it, you could offer the driver like $1, but you didn't have to. And also, then the first person in line would have to get in the back seat, and you want them to be the second person in line so that you could get in the front seat. There's just a lot of weird etiquette about the whole thing. But this was back when, like, I think iPhones were coming out. Check me on that. But I remember I was getting my news feed, and I got this alert as we were driving across the Bay Bridge that Marissa Mayer was going to be the CEO of Yahoo, and that she was just being touted because she was 37 years old. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm 37 years old. Now, a lot of people were way more successful than me, a lot younger than me. But this one was like so specific. I looked her up, and she actually grew up in a small town 100 miles away from me in central Wisconsin. And then I really started to compare myself, which, always goes really well. And so my first thought, to get back to the point of the rat race, is like, I should be CEO of something right now, maybe not Yahoo. But then in like my next thought, I'm like, wait a second, that is exactly not what I want to be. That's completely not the freedom lifestyle that I've been searching for my whole life. And so it was that moment was, people have different times in their lives that they're kind of hit with things. And that was a huge one for me. And so after that, I decided, okay, we're getting back to freedom. So I'm like, I'm going to go independent. I'm going to do work on my terms. And, I'm going to save up all my money, and I'm going to kind of leverage how much money I have and how much I work, and it's all going to work well. Well, then in 2020, the COVID stock market crash happened. And we were kind of getting close to reaching our dream at the time. And I think it's because we were so close that crash really hit me hard. And so I told Claire, my wife, that, we really wouldn't be able to be changing our lifestyle too soon, and that, I would have to continue working, and we wouldn't be retiring early. And she actually looked at me, and she was cool, because she said, so she was just like, hypothetically, Claire's a lot smarter than me. That is highly represented in the book, and I'm sure you'll realize that as we talk more. But she said, what would you actually do if you retired early? And I didn't have a really good answer. And so I told her, well, I thought about it for a long time, and then I had said, well, I'd probably do the same thing, but maybe just a little bit less, or like pro bono or something like that. So she's like, you're really not retiring, or you're really not quitting work. And I'm like, oh my God, you're right. And so I had been calculating my numbers to be like, how soon could I get to financial freedom? But really what I then did is I'm like, well, how long would it take me to earn enough so that I could work 9 months of the year and then have enough in savings that I could kind of use that money to handle the inconsistent income over the summers? And I could actually do that. So the first one, like, how could I get to full financial freedom? It was another 20 years. I think I was 45 at the time, and that's 65. That's like normal retirement. And I was not very happy about that. When I redid those numbers to think about when I could actually be time free and have this meaningful freedom instead of this absolute freedom, it was 3 years. And actually that did happen. So over the next 3 years, we worked and saved and planned. And then 2023, in that summer, that was the first summer that I took fully off. And I've kind of now lived and advocated for this lifestyle ever since. So a little bit of a long story, but that's how this all came to be. Oh, and then how did the book come about? As I was reflecting that summer in 2023, I'm like, man, this was quite the journey. I've learned a ton. And so many people were asking me about it. I thought, let's write about it. And I'll tell you, writing a book is the most wonderful professional thing that I've I've been doing, and it's so rewarding because it really forces you to think about why you believe the things that you believe. Everybody should do it, I recommend. But that kind of gets us up to this point where now I get to talk about all of these stories on this podcast in advance of the book coming out in April.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I can say from personal interactions with you, watching your journey as you've been writing the book. So just everyone knows I am also Brian's assistant, and um,
You should tell
I
how
kind of
we
came
met. Do you
on.
know how we? Do you know how we? Or
Yeah, yeah, I
that's kind
do
of it. They're
remember
probably. I was
that.
thinking they were like, how? Why are these two doing this together?
Yeah, a good point. So actually right at the beginning of my journey as well, and it kind of coincides timing wise with the book a little bit, that Brian was looking for additional help as he was kind of pivoting into this writing aspect as well. And he found my business coach through another book, and she has like a directory, got online, looked me up, and the rest has been kind of history. We met and it was an instant connection, I think. And so I've got to watch Brian grow as he's been writing this book, and also just watching your personal transformation because you're so passionate about this topic and helping others and spreading that word so that it's not just your lifestyle. Like, how many more people can we help? Is just so beautiful and powerful. And that's why, like, I'm here doing what I do with all the thought leaders that I work with. And this has been one thing that I consistently always tell my clients. And I'm just excited to continue to share our stories and kind of grow from here. One thing that I remember very early on is the time freedom curve that you talked about. And I always remember it as the smile curve. Can you share more about that?
Yes. Yeah, and it's so weird that I found you through researching when I was researching for the book. It was a book called Tiny. I have it on my shelf. It's called Tiny Business Big Money, and it featured a story about your coach. And then I looked up your coach, and I found you on the website. It was pretty cool. The time freedom curve. This is something that I have in chapter 1 of the book. So let me start with the financial freedom curve. So people are most likely familiar with the exponential growth of money, right? You know, this is the eighth wonder of the world. If you start saving really early, your money compounds and grows and it forms this convex curve. I think that's what
I
it
think
is.
that's right.
I have to look
We'll
up my
fact check
science.
it.
I'll have to check. Ask my son who's in ninth grade science, and he'll and so you have to hit freedom, but it's like you're below it, you're not hitting freedom, and then all of a sudden you make rapid gains, but it's at the end. That's why you're supposed to be saving so early. So like to hit freedom on the financial freedom curve using the compounded value of money, it's a long time, right? What I experienced once I shifted my way of thinking around time freedom is that curve that's convex flips to being concave. So it's now one of those curves that looks like the diminishing returns type curves. And so when you make that shift and you think, how can I maximize my freedom earlier? You make jumps much sooner, faster, and then you kind of level off. And so, ultimately you're going to hit the same absolute freedom later in
Mhm.
life, but the amount of freedom that you get at an earlier stage is much earlier. Now, of course, as part of the editorial process for the book, I had my wife read the book. Claire read the book, and she's a scientifically minded person. And she said, "Where's the data behind these curves?"
Ooh.
And I said, "There is no data." And so you'll notice when you read the book, everybody should actually, you can order it now and we'll tell you how to do that later. But it'll say that so I have a line like, "This curve is anecdotal, not scientific," or something like that in there to satisfy Claire. So now you know that little secret and the history behind that line.
She's always bringing the heat.
Absolutely. And she's wonderful, loving, and has a very critical eye. And I've learned through the process of writing a book that you have to protect your book baby early from anyone that could possibly cause you to give up on it. And so I did not share my book with my wife until much later in the process, still early enough or still soon enough so that she could help make it a lot better. And oh my God, has she, but not so early that you're going to, you know, derail you,
Yes.
derail me.
And obviously, with her help and a lot of early readers that we were so fortunate to have, like, I mean, every time I've read a new edition of the book, I'm just blown away. And so I cannot imagine what it is. Now that you're almost through editorial,
Yeah, if people
developmental
are
edits, right?
if people wonder how a book becomes good, it's a lot of work, a lot of edits, a lot of early readers. And I've come to this new belief that to spend $25 or whatever or $20 on a book that distills someone's entire life's knowledge, that is an incredible investment. That's an incredible investment.
And especially knowing how much they get on the back end.
Yes, not much. You're
Yeah.
really writing it for the people, right? You're not writing
Yeah,
it to become rich.
exactly. Exactly. So I think everyone's probably biggest question right now is how long does this take? How do we do it?
Yes. Okay. So, I believe that you can become a free timer in 3 years, typically. Now, first, what is a free timer? A free timer, when you first hear it, you might think freeloader, and that's not that at all. And then usually, then my mind, when I was thinking about this, went to like two timer, and I'm not a two timer either. So it's not a freeloader, and it's not a two timer. It's a free timer. So a free timer is somebody that, instead of pursuing maximum wealth, they're pursuing maximum freedom, right? They're not believing that, I'll be able to become free at some point, like you're designing it, right? And you're not just like, well, this is my job. It's what it's meant to be. I just have to work a lot of hours. No, you're trying to craft it in such a way that works in your lifestyle. So that's living the lifestyle of a free timer. And another way to think about this too is the life path. So a typical
Mhm.
traditional life path starts with school, and then you work from 20 to 65 for 45 years, and then you retire. A free timer is a little different. It's you got to go to school, or usually go to school, at least elementary school, and then you need like 10 years, I believe, at least 10 years of skill building, network building. So that's it's not different. It's just, maybe what you're choosing to focus on is a little different because you know what the next stage is, but this is where you're developing your core skill, understanding your core network of people. And
Mhm.
but then, so now you're 35, let's say. From 35 on, you are living life differently, where each year is kind of this combination of intense work and extended time off.
Mhm.
And it can vary. So maybe for a couple years, you're working pretty intensely for the full year. And then that third year, you take some time off. Or maybe it's consistent, like I try to do year by year, where you're taking a few months off in the summer and working the rest of the year. But you're going on these kind of work adventure,
Mhm.
play adventures for possibly even longer than 65, because the idea here is that if you can create this perfect lifestyle, this perfect job that pays you good money, you do interesting work, you enjoy the people and the social connections, all of those sorts of things, you work it as long as you can because it's enjoyable. And that's what the free timer lifestyle is. Now, how long does it take to get there? It's not 20 years. So most of the people that kind of become attracted to this model are middle career professionals. They're professionals like I was, some usually between 35 and 45. That's not scientific either, Claire, but that's what I've experienced. But it's like at that point, you kind of looking in the mirror and you're like, okay, I've been working hard and I just, didn't get that promotion or got looked past. And you think, okay, I got another 20 years of this ahead of me, and you have to make a decision.
Mhm.
And maybe you decide you want to go for it. Great. Or you do. The main thing is the thing that drives me is I don't want people to go, well, I'm just going to grin and bear it and gut it out for another 20 years and then I'll be retired. That is bad in my mind. I mean, people can choose what they want to do, but for me, that's not great. And so at that point, you can shift your focus, make some changes, and implement some of the strategies and the frameworks and the tools and project your money and various sorts of things, that all of the things that we'll get into, and reach that time freedom in usually 3 years. It's what it took me. from that 2020 experience to the 2023 summer. It's very possible. Now, if you're earlier in your career, it's probably going to be a little bit longer, but I'm talking longer, like 10 years, not 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah, and I think, you have the time freedom calculator, and that's a great resource to kind of figure out what that might look like for you, for those who are interested. And I was pleasantly surprised. Like, I mean, I thought it was 15, 20 years at least, as, with young children and also starting a business, having you know, building a house, doing all these things that we want to do in our future. And it still wasn't that far off. And that gave us a renewed hope in not only our financial situations, but also like, what else can there be? I mean, what else can your future look like? Because you have that freedom and you have that flexibility to be able to do those things. And I think at some point you mentioned, not in today's episode, but in our previous conversations, you can even start small, like taking one day off a week or half a day off a week and building those times up so that you get like early wins and get a taste of
Yes.
that lifestyle. I'm 1 year in and I take Mondays off. I still do a little bit of work, but I have no meeting Mondays. And, I get to be present with my kids and I get to be home with my kids because they're on 4-day school weeks. And that was just one simple shift that we've made that, you know, just continues to compound as you make that financial progress and the time freedom progress that you're speaking about.
I love that you brought that up because sometimes people feel overwhelmed. And so, chapter 13 in the book is all about, optimizing time freedom through this concept of seasonal schedules, which we'll have an episode about as part of the season. And people think, oh, I don't know how that could work for me, or so that's so big. But you're right, there are strategies that you can take to kind of get move yourself toward that. Yeah. And I mean, also alluded to kind of a good preview of what we're going to talk about next week, which is the time freedom formula. And it's a different way of thinking about your finances that can then kind of structure how you choose to do what you do in different areas of your life. Because and the time freedom formula is also helpful because it teaches you that you don't have to be good in all these things in order to have time freedom. You could be good at, controlling your spending, or you could be good at investing, or you could be good at entrepreneurship in some regard, and I'm not talking about building the next Google. I'm talking about like creating a lifestyle business that works for you, that gives you the flexibility. So that is our topic for next week.
Yay.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any final thoughts for today?
No, I'm just hopeful that this is helpful to people. I thank you for mentioning my passion around this because I definitely have it. It's there. And yeah, I think like the key message from this episode, if I had to summarize it, is that I would recommend focusing, and I'll tell you how to do it, but recommend focusing on time freedom first. And then the money stuff, the financial freedom will kind of work itself out in the background and kind of come through for you. So that's my
Yes.
parting advice there.
Yes. Well, I have one final question. What's the score between you and Claire?
Oh,
Sounds like
yes,
she's one up right now.
this is in the book. We have a running joke in our relationship that we keep score in our relationship. And it sounds bad, but it's actually kind of just a fun little game that we play. The fun part about it is that the score is about, I think it's like 1,282 Claire to 9 Brian. So there you go. That's
All right. Well, that's it for today's episode. We now know Brian is at number 9.
yes.
He'll be at
I'm
10
back.
maybe by the next episode.
So I think we're gonna put this on all the podcast channels. So please leave us a review. That helps. And I think we're gonna put it on YouTube as well. So I've always wanted to say this. Please like and subscribe.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, everyone, have
We'll
a
see you
great day.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.
All right.